Hey everybody, thanks for joining. This is Martin Mahler speaking. I'm doing a tiny sound check and seeing if everything is all right. Still have a couple of minutes to start, and I see there are a lot of people joining now, so we'll give it some. Should be able to see my screen as well. Camera, smiling. So I can put a little bit more central.
Looking sharp, Martin. All good.
These are amazing Vizlib offices here, completely barricaded. Actually, I'll move it here. It's fine. Right, I'm excited. So, yeah, we still have a couple minutes, and last time I had lots of folks joining about 5 to 10 minutes late. So we'll wait 5 minutes. We'll start 5 after 3 o'clock in the UK and 5 after 10 in the US. Yeah, good morning to all the folks from overseas. Happy Friday also to everybody. So I hope you can have sound, as in there's a tiny chat. So if you ask any questions in there, they'll be posted to me and I can answer them. It's a quite interactive tool that we have here with GoToWebinar, which allows us to communicate with our listeners in a better and more organized way. We have a few people joining. I already see some familiar people who are on the webinar, especially some friends from Copenhagen. Hopefully we'll have some positive news to show to you guys today. All right, so the dial-ins that are available, I think, are US and Russia. Good question, why? You can always dial in via your computer, so that's one possibility. I'll see if there's anything I can do from our side to activate more dial-ins. So, okay, it's not editable in session, unfortunately. But that's a good point. We should have more numbers available. And yes, unfortunately, I can't update that now, but for next time, we'll definitely know that. So if you want to dial in, use perhaps the US number if possible, or dial in with your computer, so computer audio via internet. If you struggle doing so from your business computer, try perhaps dialing in via your phone. That should work if you have 4G or Wi-Fi or similar. Should be no problem. I see some people have also dialed in from their phone on top of the computer. So it's great. Let's give it another 3 minutes, guys. We're just on time, but I can see people are starting. Some of them have to install the client, or some people are joining a little bit late. So we will start in 3 minutes. So Yeah, so generally interesting times now. We are, as you probably know, some of you, there's a Data Revolution tour now happening, organized by Qlik, which is Qlik's annual tour where they're hosting and similar event type, but across different cities across the globe. Predominantly in the US, but also in Europe. And with Vizlib, obviously, we will try to meet as many of you as we can. So we're sponsoring a couple of those events. We're traveling across Europe, and speaking to as many people as we can. Feedback is great. It's always nice to see people in person and not just via email or via effectively seeing when you guys download something from our website, but or social media effectively, but also in person. It's kind of also interesting, the different kind of companies that use Vizlib or generally Qlik, which can start from governmental agencies to computer games, obviously a lot of pharma, financial services, publishing companies. So a variety of how you guys are using Vizlib is very, very exciting, especially also healthcare. Hospitals who not only use data visualization to report, but potentially to also optimize their bed utilization to ensure that people are effectively that the hospital is organized better and effectively saving lives in some perspective. So there was a really great presentation by the NHS who showed us their journey of Qlik Sense in the past 2 years, and how they effectively built some really cool dashboards with some nice screens in the hospitals where nurses and doctors can stop by and quickly do some analysis and check the utilization of the ward. So really, really great stuff, and we'll make sure to make a story or a blog post out of this because it's actually exciting and inspiring for a lot of you in this perspective. So let's wait 1 more minute. I can see a lot of people joining here. Just for those of you who have just joined and have not been on one of those webinars before, this is a kind of an interactive webinar where you can ask questions, where we have the possibility to give you polls. And naturally, if you attend and you like it, we're obviously going to host a recording of the webinar on YouTube afterwards that you can share with your peers if you think it's worth watching, perhaps some parts of it. Cool. We've had 5 minutes past, so I will take liberty and begin. So let me. Perfect. Exciting. Cool. Hey guys, everybody, welcome to the 4th webinar of Vizlib, this time covering the Vizlib September release that came out last month, but also some new updates and exciting, features that we have developed, as well as kind of use this opportunity to share with you what's on our head, what are we currently working on, and ultimately where we're going. I have a couple of interesting polls and really, really cool features that we just released, hopefully, and I know some of the attendees will like them, pretty sure. So let's get started for this. So really, really brief on the agenda. So the community was, the Vizlib KPI object was released at the beginning of September. I showed it during the last webinar as well, but still I'm going to use the opportunity to go through it again and perhaps also showcase a couple of the new features that we did release in the past week or so. Community is a very, very interesting thing that we have been working on for the past 2-3 months, and I've been mentioning that for a while, so I'll showcase you what we've done there. Pivot table and heat map as well, we had an important release. And then obviously some of the new stuff that we're working on for the next month. So I hope this one's going to be excited. So I prepared a couple of really cool things. Starting as always with news around Vizlib. So I want to keep this a little bit brief. But as already highlighted, we are sponsoring the Qlik Data Revolution Tour. So this is a tour that's hosted by Qlik. It is happening across Europe and the US. And we decided to sponsor 3 of them. and to get the chance to meet you guys in person and to also present Vizlib to new folks. So we did London in the UK. That was actually on Wednesday, so it's not on there anymore, but really, really exciting, great feedback, lots of interest. There's a lot of people who are still QlikView, but migrating more and more into Qlik Sense and see to have a technology as a strategic solution for their company and also for the data analytics strategy. So it's very, very good to see that momentum and that excitement across customers, Qlik themselves, but more importantly, how the ecosystem is kind of growing in that sense. So yeah, the next events that we will attend is the one in Madrid. So that is in 2 weeks time, and then in 3 weeks. So some of you who will be there, come say hi to us. We're sorry we didn't do the United States. Kind of realized that a little bit too late, and then it was too difficult to plan this, but I'm sure next year we will try to do as many cities as possible. Having said that, we will be coming to Connections this year, and obviously that'll be another opportunity to meet us. But really, really cool events, and if you have the opportunity, try and attend one of these. A lot about data literacy, very, very interesting presentations around Qlik's roadmap, very highly recommended. So with this, as I said, try to keep it brief because I have a lot of updates and a lot of news that I want to go through with you today. So starting with this, I'm very, very excited to announce that we have launched the beta phase of our Vizlib community. So most of you already know the Qlik community. So most of you already know the Qlik community, and you probably use it because there's a lot of interesting posts, help. If you have any questions on the community or something, where you typically get an answer. So our thought is to kind of help you guys set up a similar platform, however, where you can discuss, showcase, various questions around Vizlib and collaborate there. I know most of you guys who are attending now are champions of Vizlib within your organizations, but I think the biggest challenge that you guys have is that a lot of people coming to you with Vizlib questions, right? So the idea of a Vizlib community is to give the people within your organizations like a platform where you can go in, explore solutions, get ideas, and kind of ultimately help themselves somehow. So so that's a collaboration aspect. Obviously, we want to improve the whole support experience of Vizlib. Feature requests will go via the community as well. Very important, release notes. And the last bit is solutions and examples, which we will start to populate over time more and more. So jumping right into this, I will show you how it is looking. So now, most of you, when you go to vizlib.com, and you have your user portal, you will see that now at the top right, you will have something that says community beta, as a matter of fact. So all you need to do is you just click on this and it will redirect you to our new community page. Very important, if you have a Vizlib account, you have a community account. So it's all tightly interlinked, so you don't need to do anything from your site. Now, as you see, the cool thing is that you have like a search box. So everything that is around forums and solutions or even tickets is something that can be searched for, so indexed effectively. So if I want to find out how to install Qlik Sense, you immediately get a suggestion. So then you comment a solution and you have lots of steps on how to install this. So think of, for example, you guys are the champions, you go on holidays, somebody else takes over installing updates for Qlik Sense, you can share this document, and more of these things will ultimately come. So so this is the set of solutions that we are populating. So the knowledge base around the library, around the user portal, obviously licensing and pricing for the people who are new and have a lot of questions of how that works, and obviously general questions on Vizlib. And this is something that me and Dave and the rest of the Vizlib team will be populating, and this will become more valuable over time. Now, the second thing is the community, so the forum, the interactive part, right? So in the forum discussions, we have different kind of segments, right? And I would like to start with what's new in Vizlib. So we decided the big challenge we had was that we release relatively often and relatively fast, and Obviously, the monthly webinars like this one help communicate what has changed, what are the updates, but we kind of want to give you the ability to see that in a more organized way and improve that. So now when you go to the forums and the discussions, there's a section which is called What's New in Vizlib. And in here, David is posting every time we release a new version, the release note. So you see, for example, the pivot table was released, or the heat map was released actually today. And then you can go to the individual releases. So let's say there's a pivot table and you see what are the enhancements and what are the bugs that have been fixed, right? And they also have an ID. So in case you raise a support ticket, you'll be able to tightly link them together. Now, so you know, very, very good. You see what's happening, you see what's new effectively in an organized way. So as a owner of Vizlib, you'll be able to download these things and be informed. Now, the cool thing is that you have, and the reason why we do this is you have a tiny follow button here at the top left. And if you click on the follow button, you're then following this forum, which means whenever David or we generally as Vizlib release a new version, you automatically receive an email that, hey, this is a new forum release, these are the changes, and you're better informed. So hopefully it become much easier for you guys to manage and to communicate. So that's the what's new in Vizlib. Another thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to somehow get the feature requests a little bit more organized. Lots of you have similar ideas and you send us emails and we discuss ideas that ultimately are, you know, done, are duplicated in this case, but you don't know, right? You don't know what other people are raising. So so effectively here in the feature request, you can actually now make a forum post. And so, for example, here Piers made a suggestion, and then ultimately as a reader, you can start liking the idea. And obviously, hopefully, this will become some sort of a prioritization exercise for us. If there are a lot of likes there, we can then translate this into a ticket, prioritize this, and work on this. So this is to kind of crowd ultimately innovate together with ideas, and then ultimately also post comments, right? So that's the idea here, that if we say, look, tooltip on cell level on the table, that was a great idea, and they can start commenting, you can discuss, and then you can put your own view there and perhaps even improve it. So that's something that we want to kind of foster. So whenever you have, and here you can see which is planned, which is in progress, which is deferred, which is implemented, and which is not taken. So these things will be ultimately categorized as well. So you can see what we're working on based on that. So that's cool. And then obviously tips and tricks, bug reporting, if you want to report it here or off topic, you can post anything in there what you want. So we'll see how that goes, but that's generally very exciting for you. Now, the really important thing for you guys who are especially, you know, front officing Vizlib in your organizations is the organization of tickets. So right now you send an email to support@vizlib.com and you can keep doing that, nothing changes. Or you can go to your support portal and submit a ticket here. And so here, for example, you can pre-add browser type, typical questions, are you using September, which extension are you using, and then, you know, attach a file. You don't necessarily need to send an email, but that's up to you. Now, the cool thing is that if you've already raised a couple of tickets in the past, it'll be probably lost somewhere in your email inbox, right? So actually, it's more organized than you think. If you go to your My Tickets area here, you will see immediately which tickets are open and what status they are on. So for example, this is in a case where somebody reported a bug, which is waiting fix, and another ticket which is being processed. Or as a matter of fact, you can see all tickets that you've ever raised, and you see that these things have been resolved effectively. So a better organization, hopefully, and will also improve the experience. And just so you know a little bit where this is going, the next step would be to kind of assign, to see which tickets within your organization have been raised. So if somebody else from your company has raised a ticket, you will be, as an admin, able to see them as well. So that's something that we're doing as part of our ongoing improvement of the support experience, and to give you more meaning around what's happening, when things are being worked on, and so on and so on. So that's the Vizlib community for you guys. Explore it, give us feedback, ideas. So one question I have actually, and that should fit here right directly, is no, I don't have the polls managed polls. 1 second. Okay. All right, so no polls. I actually set them up incorrectly, so apologies for this, but it doesn't matter. So the community is here. Please start posting things in there, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you. One thing that is possible as well is to have a forum per organization. So if you guys want to have a private forum where you within your team can communicate, that's something that we can happily accommodate as well, and happy to experiment. So this is for you, the community. Next thing, now more around visualizations. So we already released the KPI designer. I showcased that to you last month. I would quickly do a run through, but perhaps also highlight a little bit what new things is coming and what we have already implemented last week. So I am now showing you the KPI designer in Qlik Sense. So where we came from with the designer, for those of you who see it for the first time, was that there were a lot of challenges when we were trying to build a KPI object around how it should look like. You know, there were different views, people have different ideas, different preferences around KPI objects. So it was really, really difficult to provide you with a layout, a fixed static layout that everybody would need to work in within. And personally, that's something that, you know, we individually never liked within Qlik Sense, that you can only display a KPI object in one certain way. There are obviously fantastic KPI solutions out there, like Simple KPI or Climber KPI or eCRIF KPI. So we took a step back and we went and we developed the KPI designer. So the KPI designer effectively is kind of like a self-service, pixel-perfect way to create your own KPI from scratch. So the idea that we've implemented here is the so-called layering principle. So you start basically with a blank canvas, and you can start adding effectively layers here that can be, you know, an icon, an image, or even a chart type. So
yeah,
here,
sorry, Martin. I think we cannot see that. We can only see the community page. So probably it's in the other screen.
Perhaps. Sorry, good point, David. Let me see screen. Can you see it now, David?
Yeah, looking good. All yours.
Okay, apologies for that, and thank you, David. So yeah, let me start from start. So KPI object, you have ultimately the ability to create so-called layers, right? Some of you have already experimented, showcased some really cool examples what can be done. But let's say I start with a text, like a measure. That's your key measure, and the result is I'm going to now put a static 30% that you can format really nicely from here. You can obviously also increase the size if you wanted to make it like a very big, important number. The second layer could be, you know, an icon that you can put in here to indicate like a change, a relative change month on month or quarter on quarter. And of course, you know, play around with the colors, make it dynamic, and so on and so on. Now, the beautiful thing is, of course, you can position this perfectly on the screen. You can even overlap objects if you wanted to, or put it on the right, on the left, and so on. And this way, slowly, by adding multiple layers, you can then start building your own custom KPI solution here. So you see, you know, with this option, and you know, also have the ability to add lines, for example, that allows you to organize your KPI perhaps into different segments, right? When you have supporting metrics or key metrics in that sense. So with this, you ultimately can build something that is really nice and up to you how you want it to look like. Or, you know, if it's a little bit too complicated for you or too much work to create the layering principle, we also have the ability to say, you know what, actually, you can go and choose from one of the available presets here that we have pre-created for you, a financial KPI, a horizontal KPI, a trend KPI, and you can say, look, I want to kickstart with this one here. And then, boop, the layers are created, and then you can start modifying here on the fly. Up to you, but with this, you can create some really cool examples, such as the ones that you see here, or here on the right-hand side. Now, the really brilliant thing is, for you guys who use Qlik or generally want to leverage the whole customizability, you have the ability to add actions here. So for example, if somebody clicks on this KPI object, they move to a different sheet. Or they make a selection and they move to a different sheet. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to, you can even go to the individual layers and assign to the target an action itself. So, you know, imagination is the limit. Don't go too wild. We had somebody trying to build a table out of a KPI object, which you may do, but don't use a table for purposes of a table. Cool thing is also you have show and hide layers. So you can even make a KPI KPI object dynamics. So you can kind of like highlight if a certain threshold has been exceeded based on the available selections that are being made. Now, the last really cool thing that is available since this week is also the ability to add a tooltip on the layer. So if I say, for example, this is the 93%, and fair enough, for you as a developer, it makes sense, but for somebody who sees the dashboard for the first time, he has no idea what that metric means. So you can now go in here and you can enable a tooltip. And you can say, this metric, 93%, is the percentage of target as defined by management, for example. So now, if somebody hovers over it, he gets more context. And of course, as is Vizlib, you have lots of functionality around formatting it, play around with the opacity, with the position, and so on and so on. So that's a little bit of a new feature. So you can explain the metrics if you wanted to, or actually have more stuff. So it even supports, I think, HTML. So that's a cool new thing that we added. And just so you know where things are going with a KPI object. So we have two major kind of feature requests. So one is when you hover over the KPI object, it should take a little bit of a darker background if it's combined with actions to help indicate that, hey, there is actually something to be clicked. So that's something that we're working on. And the other thing is, if you go to the layers, right now you have obviously a rich amount of layers, like a bar chart, line chart, bullet chart, but pie chart would help, or an activity gauge as well. So these are the things that we're looking at to include in the next versions of the KPI object. Obviously, we'll release them one by one as and when they are available. And yeah, and obviously feedback that comes from your side is highly appreciated. So this is about the KPI object. I'll leave this open, and during Q&A, I'm more than happy to go into more questions. Next thing, pivot table. So David, can you confirm you see the pivot table screen?
Yeah, so I can see the presentation.
Perfect. Brilliant. Okay, so pivot table, obviously a very powerful extension, one of the most used ones, especially for finance, especially for reporting, especially for like branded creation of income statement, P&L reports and similar. So we continued working on it. So a couple of tiny features, but important for you to know is the following. So I will now change. We'll move into the pivot table view here. So for David, can you see the screen?
Yeah, looking good.
Okay. Brilliant. So one thing that I'm not sure if you guys knew or you didn't know, so obviously you have a lot of rich formatting options with a pivot table. And one thing that kind of like came and was important was the ability to export this to Excel. So that's something that we implemented. So whenever you export this to Excel, it not just exports the data, but also retains the formatting, including also the icons. Also, yeah, you can specify whether or not you want to include the icons, but effectively, this is then something that you can then send or share via email. Now, obviously, not always you want to export in a formatted way. Sometimes you just want a data dump. So actually, when you click on right-click and to export, you have the ability to choose. Do you want an exported, a formatted export, or do you just want a very plain data dump, a CSV file, a flat one that ultimately looks like this, nothing crazy, but perhaps useful for further data processing. Continuing with this, another very important feature was actually received a lot of feedback is our pivot ad hoc table, where people can select dimensions and measures and create their pivot table on the fly. Now, for you Qlikies, you know that if you create a data island, you use expressions, you can kind of simulate this, but it requires a lot of prep work to get it in that space. So what we did is we tried to work towards the direction of creating a custom report, however, make it a little bit more user-friendly. So the idea is the following. So now the pivot table, you have on the top right hand, the opportunity to click on this and to choose from a list of available dimensions that have been predefined in your data model, in your object. So the way this works is you would go to your pivot table, you would go into your data here, and you have dimensions and you have alternative dimensions. And the same with measures and alternative measures. Now, alternative dimensions and measures are by default not shown, but the user can easily come in here and then see what is available and then dynamically slice and dice it and click on OK, and then basically create their own pivot table on the fly, effectively. Create their own pivot table on the fly, and then perhaps even export it to Excel, which I think most of the people will do anyway. However, right, the same also applies for the measures. So you can actually select multiple measures, add them, and expose your data model, your data lake, and then have people explore this on top of the powerful Qlik data engine. So something for you guys to explore and to use. Now, the thing is, we're not done yet with this. So the reason why we're going is the following. So first of all, when you come in here, at some point you will want to save your favorite Martin view. We're looking to potentially support this by using bookmarks, or perhaps we will create our own favorites, but you will have the ability to create your own view and store it, and then every time you go in your dashboard, recall it as well. And then obviously there are also some thoughts where perhaps you can see the whole data model here on the left-hand side, and you can completely create the pivot table dynamically without necessarily having to define it as an alternative. So that's a little bit where we're going. We want to give you the ability to create a fully custom report of a pivot table, and then ultimately make it much more interactive and explorable, like Excel, but on steroids, effectively. And so that's how has happened. Feedback on this and also questions, more than happy to take them. And the last bit, really tiny, but that's also very, very important, text wrapping. So that was a very important feature from you guys, but now, for example, you have the ability to wrap the text, so it doesn't even like overlay. This is not yet implemented in the table. Eventually it will. I know there was a feature request around having this capability in the table as well, but it is now available in the pivot table, ultimately make it look a little bit nicer. And the second thing is, obviously on the left-hand side, you have different dimensions when you structure your pivot table in a more fixed format. So now you have the ability to specify the width individually for every single dimension here. So this is entirely up to you, but a little bit more control, and more of these things are coming into the pivot table slowly and surely. I'm not sure if you guys read the release notes from last month, but also for measures, you have the ability to show them as HTML or as URL. So if you're URL, you can embed a URL into your pivot table, or even if you're a fan of HTML, you can embed HTML code in your pivot table as well. Up to you, explore this. You're the geniuses who are ultimately making the most value out of Vizlib. So keen to hear your feedback, perhaps even in a community forum. Right, so continuing with this, we are now going to another excitement thing, but this is again commitment that we keep working and we keeping our word, even though perhaps sometimes it takes a little bit longer than expected. But finally, the Vizlib heat map has also alternative dimensions and measures. So it's actually released today, and I know we have a big fan on this feature who has been requesting this from us since I think February or March. But now it is available and gives us the ability to, let me quickly come in here. So as you know, alternatives is basically a way where you can predefine a dimension, which is not in use, but gives the user the ability to change on the fly. This is not a hard setting. They don't have to go into edit mode. It's something that they change dynamically. Now, this is something that we have been secretly implemented in each one of our extensions. It's not there yet in all of them, but eventually it will be. And the pie chart was released, by the way, 2 weeks ago with this feature, but it's now also available in the heat map. So that means alternative dimensions, alternative measures. And when you define alternative measures and dimensions, you now have the drop-down where you can say, look, I want to select product group. And you can change your visualization on the fly. You can have a subgroup here and ultimately explore your data set much more dynamically than you could in a static case. And that applies both to dimensions, and I think you can even rearrange them on the fly to change make the months horizontally and the product group vertically, but also the same on the metrics. Instead of looking at number of products, you can look at the current year sales, for example. So this way, exploring your data set much more dynamically. So that's out there. Have a look at this, explore this. To give you a little bit of an idea where we're going with the heat map, another feature that we want to implement is scrollability. So, generally the heat map benefits from the fact that you can see the whole data set in one go, and the colors indicate highlights and lowlights. But sometimes you want to show the top 20 and then have a scroll bar, because otherwise it gets squished too much. So this is something that we will look to implement as well. no ETA, but just to kind of give you an idea. And obviously, feedback very welcome on the heat map as well. So that's now available. Please explore it and let us know how it goes. Right. Continuing now. These were on a high level the changes or the new features that we've introduced in the past 4 to 5 weeks, effectively. Obviously, more things are coming, and this is becoming. We're also growing the team, so we're hiring and looking for people. So this is something that will improve and will speed up, and we will have ultimately more and more parallel development. But yeah, it just takes time, but we're getting there ultimately. So to show you what we're working on right now and what we are looking at and what's kind of going on next. So and then we will have time for questions, which I know from last time was very, very interesting. So I want to leave enough room for this. So regarding the roadmap, nothing has changed. So we still have those key items that need to be delivered. So the waterfall chart, the combo chart is very, very, very sought after, the slider, but also more importantly, the sheet menu. And next to charts, obviously, support for theming and support for printing. There's been a lot of requests around these things because you guys use either a lot of themes and because you want to standardize it and you want it to work with Vizlib, or the other one where you create stories to generate regular reports, and you want Vizlib objects in there as well. And absolutely, we understand it, and we need to resolve this. The good news is we've started with a sheet menu. We started actually this week, so it's all very early. But I can show you perhaps a little bit for you guys who haven't heard of it or you don't know what we're trying to do. So we are ultimately trying to bring the mashup world into Qlik Sense. So in my view and what I see and what I hear is that people like mashups because they're so nicely organized. They have that web appy feeling and then a nicer navigation where you can organize your sheets that are available in a much more kind of guided way. Now, in Qlik Sense, when you want to open a sheet, you're a little bit, you have to drop down, you see the overview, but it's not really structured in that way. So what we want to do is we want to replace the whole top bar, even completely white label, that people don't even know that they're in Qlik Sense, and give them the ability to navigate and change between sheets, ultimately you're making your Qlik Sense into more a web app effectively. And that will include a burger menu, that will include like a navigation at the top, and perhaps more features that we will look at as we progress ultimately. So really brief, it's obviously still in development, and this is something that we're potentially looking to do more closely, is to involve more and more of you guys in the beta phases where you can give us more direct feedback on some of the stuff that we are working as we are working on them. We already have some sort of these beta phases, but more like ad hoc and not so organized. So one question is obviously back to you if you would like to be involved in this, because ultimately, you guys use our stuff the most in that case. But to show you, I'm now in Qlik Sense. It's going to be extension number 17. It's going to call the Vizlib sheet menu. And again, really brief, it's not done yet, but the idea is you drag it on your screen, and ultimately it starts modifying the whole top of it. You will always need to have it there, so you always need to take at least one square bracket on the screen. We'll see if there's a way to avoid that, but the idea is then that you will have, the background color be able to change this, make it yellow, make it pink, or or perhaps even like Vizlib blue in this case. No, okay, this doesn't work. Or let's say red, for example, or blue, and then obviously you can even add an icon. Is at the moment, as I said, very limited, but you can, for example, add like an icon at the top left, or it could be a company's logo, and then you will have the ability to add 1, 2, 3, 4 sheets. Perhaps you have 20 sheets, but perhaps only 4 make sense, and then give the user the ability to hide the edit button, move right and left, or hide this whole icon as it is. So the idea is then it would look like this, and it would make your Qlik Sense app to a web app effectively, where people don't even know that they're in Qlik Sense. So that's where we're going. It's still early, as I said, we started this week. We did a lot of back-end kind of structure thing, but we hope to have it out by the end of October. It shouldn't take long, and we have actually 2 resources allocated on this full time. Right. So that's the next exciting thing. Obviously, if you're interested in participating in a beta or get a preview or similar, just perhaps raise a question here and I'll take notice of this. Cool, so that's there. Now, the other thing is, and that's very, very important, is printing, right? So story mode is actually one of its most powerful features of Qlik Sense, where you can take a snapshot of your dashboard and commentary and create like almost like a PowerPoint presentation based on the data. And we ultimately, a lot of you guys are using our stuff in story modes. Now, the downside is that when you want to print them to PDF or PowerPoint, it's not really working so far. So this is something that we are trying to work on. So just to give you an idea, it's not something easy. So it takes a lot of time to rework and refactor our code. But I would like to kind of share with you the progress that we have made so far, because I know you guys are using this and I'm telling you we're working on this. So just to come back to this, so we have already released 3 extensions which are supported with PDF for PowerPoint printing, which is the line chart, the scatter chart, and the pie chart. Currently resolved, but in testing, is the Vizlib bar chart and the Vizlib table. Some of you prioritize the table, and so that's why we pushed on this. And we will make sure that the rest of the library as well, the ones that are in progress, the heat map, Venn diagram, Sankey, will support printing as well. But we will release it as and when we can, one by one. But we hope to have it all resolved before the end of this year. There are some extensions that are not planned, like the calendar objects filter doesn't necessarily make sense always to take snapshots of them. Again, if you disagree, please raise your hand. We can then implement it as well if you have a compelling case. And yeah, just to show you perhaps what I mean. So if I come in here, and I think that's actually a very, very, very key thing here. So this is the latest version. It's still being tested, so it's not live. But if I come in here, I can take a snapshot of the data. I can go into story mode and create like a table, webinar, story. And if you haven't seen the story mode, please do explore it. Actually, it's quite interesting. And you can take the snapshots here that I just took from the dashboard. And now finally, again, it took us a while, and this is in test, so don't kill me if it's not looking entirely nice, but you can export the story now to PowerPoint as the goal. So yeah, just to show you, oh, okay, that was quick actually. Here it is. So that's not working. We're still testing a couple of tiny teething issues, but this is now supported and will be released very, very shortly. So thank you very much for your patience on this particular topic. And this is just to show that, you know, we work on what we say we will work, and we will get this resolved, and we will also get the theming resolved and supported with our library. Right, with this, we have 20 more minutes, and I would like to throw the ball back to you and have you guys ask me questions that you may have that I can answer for everybody effectively. So don't feel shy, you can just type in something and I will not mention you, I will just cover the question and then go through it. So I see some questions are already kicked off, so I will go from top to bottom, and if not, I will look at it. So there was a question around a custom number format support on the KPI object. So they want to have the ability to format in a specific way. I think, as David already just answered this question, this is a new release that we did quite recently with version 1.2. So if I go back to community and to the forums, you will see here KPI Design 1.2 has been released, and indicators wouldn't work when number formatting isn't supported. So yeah, please have a look if that helps. But again, the goal is just to support all kind of numbers in this case. So next question is around the support portal. So we have an organization who has a Vizlib front office of 2 people, very, very lovely ones, who are ultimately channeling and summarizing the requests that come from their team and from their user base to us. And the question was that right now, obviously, I just showed that you can see your own tickets. But the idea is, and the goal, and we need to develop the platform a little bit more, is to give you guys the ability to have like Vizlib admins, at which case you will see all the tickets that have been raised by somebody within your organization based on the email domain name. So you will see your personal tickets, and then you'll click on company and you'll see all your company's tickets there as well. So effectively anybody who sends an email or submits a ticket, overview over these things, and you'll be able to also monitor the progress on these things. So that's something that we're working on, and perhaps yeah, I'll reach out to you. Perhaps we want to explore this and you want to beta test it with us. So there's another question around right click of pivot table acts differently when an item is in container. The same right click is not there. So the CSV options is not an option any longer. And I saw that today actually as well. So apparently, yeah, there was a bug fix that was released. So David already answered that. So so the question is, when do we think will we have the ability of saving of items for the ad hoc pivot table? So that we don't yet have an ETA for this. I'll be honest, priority for this month will be to get out the sheet menu. But my goal is to have it end of November or perhaps early December. The question is how we are exactly going to combine it with Qlik, because I want to avoid having pivot table bookmarks and Qlik Sense bookmarks. I'd rather use Qlik Sense bookmarks and somehow make the bookmarks save what the pivot table has. So that's a little bit the idea where this is going. But yeah, I think end of November is what we're kind of targeting internally. Looking at more questions now. Right, so here's a question. Is it possible to have a YouTube tutorial using dummy data for each extension that we have developed? And I absolutely am with you on this. So this is on our to-do list. We will want to do a tiny introduction to each of our extensions. So at the moment, if you go to the forum and if you go to the solutions, and you go into Vizlib library, you see, oh, the Vizlib table has a YouTube video here, which introduces how to use it and how it can be structured and what the features are around this. So we will want to do the same thing for each of one of our extensions, and we just need to work on this. But that's on the to-do list, and all those videos will be available on YouTube on our channel. Please do subscribe, or alternatively, we will start adding the videos also in our community. Another very interesting question is what's the difference between extensions from Qlik Branch and from Vizlib? So Qlik Branch is obviously a library or a collection, a portal of open source extensions. So the big difference is that they are open source. So they have been developed by developers to showcase features, capabilities, but they are not supported. So they are just examples of what can be done with Qlik for you to take, copy, improve, enhance, even use. But obviously they're open source, which means ultimately it's up to you to support them and to develop them. With Vizlib, obviously, you get the high quality library that we have, plus features, updates, and obviously support. If you have any questions, you come to us. If you want to influence the development of Vizlib, you can help that as well. And we are also a trusted extension developer, which means that Qlik has verified our code, has put the stamp of approval where stuff that is on branch is unverified, could be vulnerable. You know, it's a code base, a list of examples that you can use for your project. So looking here, I'm reading the question. So we have, right, if there's an ad hoc capability for simple tables, So that's a good point. So at the moment the table doesn't have that ad hoc capability out of the box. You naturally can do so. I mean, nothing would stop you to come in here and let's say go to the edit mode and show and hide dimension using the visibility condition, and then you can use variables to create or generate your table on the fly. Now, having said that, there is room for improvement. We've just kind of started with the pivot table first because there are a lot of requests around it. But eventually some of these features will see themselves back into the table, and vice versa. Some features from the table will be introduced in the pivot table. So for example, the mini charts, we want to do this as well, or the progress bars, more icons. So this is something that will see itself there. There's another question: will the waterfall chart become dynamic? So yes, so with everything that we do, and especially around, say, for example, a bar chart here, I want to use. So let me refresh the page. So with everything that we do, we try to accommodate the so-called show and hide principle. So in the bar chart here that we have, so let's say I'm going to add the product group and then a random measure against it here. So every single dimension here has a calculation condition or a show and hide effectively. And the same applies also for the measure. So the idea with the waterfall chart is to have this capability as well. Now, the way that we envision to release a waterfall chart is having two capabilities. One capability is you specify a number of measures, right? And then there's a waterfall kind of visualization of them. Think of the P&L statement. Or the other way to visualize a waterfall chart is by using one metric and one dimension, and then you see how those dimension values contribute ultimately to the total of the screen. So these two ways, and I hope this answers the questions that you had on this. So the navigation menu, is this used within Qlik Sense and also add to mashups as part of an iframe? So the idea is no. So we don't want to introduce, we introduce the sheet menu so you don't need to develop a mashup. The idea around obviously a sheet menu is that this works within Qlik Sense. It's also not using the navigation API to navigate between different sheets. So you have to be within Qlik Sense itself. And the ideal goal is that if we make our sheet menu and navigation menu so flexible and customizable, there may or may not be a reason for you to use it within a mashup. Having said that, right, you can still embed a whole Qlik Sense sheet within a portal, for example, right, using an iframe, and that will work, right, because you're embedding Qlik Sense there. So that will ultimately be absolutely fine. Another interesting question is if we are planning to sell mashup templates. And the answer is we don't know yet. So I don't think we will sell templates. If anything, and that's something that we're looking for 2019, is we may develop a Vizlib template, which will effectively allow you, a little bit like Qlik View, to have pixel perfect positioning of all the charts alongside with show and hide conditions. But there are no concrete plans around this. But I think we already have some really good ideas on how we want to do this. But whether we're going to release templates, not really. Our kind of vision as Vizlib is to give you the tools and you can build any kind of template yourself, right? Rather than to give you predefined fixed versions of them. Another question is if the Vizlib library is fully supported in mashups. So that's a good question. The answer is yes and no. Yes, in a sense that we support vanilla mashups. So if you go to into your dev hub here and you create a vanilla mashup from scratch, coming here in the mashup editor, and you add a Vizlib object, then that's supported. Now, obviously in a mashup, you're then free to code anything that you want to add more CSS. It's basically a custom web app. It becomes more interesting if the mashup or the web app is hosted on a different server. So there are a lot of kind of factors there that are outside of our control. Are you doing the authentication correct? Are you having cross-domain references in the headers? And these kind of things where, so in our case, we support vanilla mashups, but anything above that, it's obviously your own risk on how you use it. We try to help you, but ultimately we cannot fix every mashup there is because of a clash. That's more your own responsibility and also risk. So there's a question around if we can share the recording of this video. After this session, I will take the recording, I will upload it on YouTube, and you will be sent an email either today or tomorrow, a follow-up email where you can see a recording of this session, and then obviously forward it to your folks if you want to. Continue with questions. There is okay, I don't know, issues. So there's a question around the calendar object around disappearing, and this is an ongoing issue that we have observed. We have several tickets regarding this open. We are looking and investigating this, but it's not always happening. It's happening sometimes. So it's a little bit difficult, but we are aware of this calendar issue. We're working on this as a priority, and we hope to fix it as soon as possible. If you're affected by this, do raise a ticket just so you're informed in case this will be rectified. Or alternatively, as I already highlighted, go to the Vizlib community, subscribe to the release notes so you'll get informed when we release an update regarding this. But we are aware of this and we are looking at this as a priority. Thank you. There are some more questions. I'm not sure I'll be able to cover all of them, so I will choose one last one, if that is okay. Let me see. Sorry. Right, there's a question, how can we get to know about upcoming webinars in the future? Again, same things, we're sending out emails, follow us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and that's where we're posting them. We're doing one a month, so always expect one. And yeah, follow us on our website. There's typically, what we do is, and I've highlighted this, we do like our monthly release cycles, which are combined with a blog post always here. So this is a Vizlib September release. And you can then see here not only the news, but you also the webinar and when it's happening. And then you can click on the registration and make sure that you're signed up to this, and then you get a calendar entry effectively. So that's how this would work. There's another question. Let me see. Sorry, I'm scrolling. By the way, David has also started answering for some of you. So you should receive responses, individuals as well. So one question is, can we set a range for the line chart and the KPI designer? So perhaps you can help us and define what you mean by range. Naturally, the KPI designer is obviously a line chart, but we were a little reluctant to offer too many features on the line chart because we don't want to make this a chart. It's still kind of like a KPI, so it should be, a supporting visualization rather than becoming a chart in itself. Having said that, obviously, I'm pretty sure it would make sense in such a case. So if you can highlight what you mean by a range, is it the y-axis? Is it the number of dimension values? Perhaps there's a way to achieve this using set analysis, perhaps. But again, depends on what exactly you're trying to achieve. So perhaps you can highlight that in an email to us and we will take a look. But at the moment, I think the axis is done dynamically. And we're happy to add more features if there's ultimately value in it. Please do let us know. Yes, so min-max values, okay. Thank you for the feedback on the articles. So we have, a very talented content editor here who is writing regular blog posts. And also good news, she'll be starting full-time with us. So she was freelancing so far, but from November she'll be full-time, and we will have more of these blog posts. So if you like any topic, let us know. Obviously, feedback as well. And yeah, we'll be more than happy to write about it. She's always looking out for ideas. So, can you subscribe to updates from tickets? I believe so. I'll be surprised if not. You should be receiving updates because they're tied to your email. Perhaps you can share with us what you mean and how exactly you mean this. But yeah, that should be possible. But again, this is a new community on Vizlib, and we obviously want to see how we can improve it, tailor it a little bit to how you guys plan on using this. But the idea is that in your My Tickets area here, you are informed when there is an update on them, wherever there's a bug awaiting a fix or a ticket has been resolved, whether it's prioritized and similar. So perfect. Yes, so with this, I would like to, no more questions. Updates from other people's tickets. As I already highlighted, this is something that is on our roadmap to have something like a company account, and then you as a manager of Vizlib, you will see other people's tickets, but it's not yet available, but this will come, see itself there. To conclude the session, thank you very much for attending. As always, we're here for you. Also via support@vizlib.com or now the Vizlib community. So please do write posts. We want to see this flourish, and then see how else we can improve it to make the experience much more interesting. And please tune up to the next webinar in a month's time. If you're around in Stockholm, Madrid, do sign up with us, and I will hear you and see you and speak to you in a month's time and the next webinar, where we hopefully will have the sheet menu live in actions. Cool. Thank you very much.